Welcome to Mind Overboard, the channel where we take a deep dive into seemingly simple questions and interesting topics and attempt to provide an alternative perspective. In this video, we're going to discuss the current state of the YouTube platform and the impact its policies may have on free speech. I know it's popular to denigrate the platform for their baffling and sometimes tone-deaf decisions that are frequently coupled with poor communication. However, while this discussion is in some ways tied to the creator experience, we're going to go deeper than that in exploring the broader cultural impact YouTube's policies have on the concept of free speech, which will be analogized in a real-world example in the recent firing of Professor Marc Lamont Hill by CNN due to comments he made in a speech delivered to a delegation of leaders at the UN. To start, we'll need to discuss YouTube's current process and policies around managing copyright issues, the current versions of which appear to have been rolled out in 2018. As a result of these policies, whenever a new video is uploaded to YouTube, it's subject to an automated review process. This process uses a software algorithm that compares audio and video sequences contained within new video uploads against a database of media files provided by various copyright holders to identify any matching information. Based on preset parameters related to clip length and match sensitivity, YouTube will immediately block videos containing matching content according to the preferences of the copyright holder. This can result in a frustrating back-and-forth process of re-editing and uploading videos in an attempt to conform with the parameters intentionally set but invisible to the offender. The potentially endless cycle is a result of the system identifying the minimum quantity of offensive material required to result in a block, and then stopping. A creator can edit the positively matched portion of the video without knowing if other sections of video will be immediately tagged once uploaded again, leading to additional edits, uploads, and blocks as the system identifies piece by piece the minimum amount of material deemed to be in violation of the rules. Other times, a video will pass a filter only to get tagged after it's already received views and, in some cases, monetization. The notice from YouTube indicates the block is a result of a manual review by someone associated with the copyright holder, but the manual designation is usually misleading. While a video can be flagged by a person, the external review is usually a similar software-based identification. It's denoted as manual solely because the review is completed by someone other than YouTube, which is why it doesn't happen immediately. The video has to be public to be found, and the independent party has to have time to locate it. From that point, the method of content identification, repeatedly tagging the same video for various small matching segments of content, unfolds in exactly the same way. This is why it's obviously based on a similar software search. If a video was comprised almost exclusively of clips that contain the copyright holder's content, such as a movie review, a manual identification by human eyes wouldn't result in the incremental identification of 10-second clips. Large portions of the video would be identified as a violation, but this doesn't typically happen. This aggravating process is a result of the necessary utilization of software or AI solutions that aren't advanced enough to make appropriate independent distinctions, coupled with YouTube's overarching policy of favoring copyright holders. I regard the software as both necessary and inadequate because there's no way to make individual human decisions about all of these situations. 300 hours of footage is uploaded to YouTube every minute. There's no cost-effective means of moderating this entirely via human intervention. However, a software solution that's designed to make minute distinctions in small pieces with the sole intention of making a positive identification is an insufficient solution to this problem, in particular because the outcome results in the creation of a claim against a party. Making a reasonable claim is commonly associated with fulfilling a burden of proof, which necessitates evidence and decision-making. The software is not designed to weigh evidence or make decisions, so we're left with millions of tiny unadjudicated claims made by copyright holders against content creators. This is certainly not the end of the world. There is, after all, an appeal process. The process, unfortunately, is not set up with the intention of resolving disputes in a meaningful way. A creator's dispute is provided to and decided upon by the copyright holder. If a creator disagrees with a rejected claim, they may file a second-level dispute. And when this occurs, the question is again turned over to the copyright holder to make a final judgment. If the copyright holder rejects the claim a second time, the creator's channel receives a copy strike. After 3 strikes of this nature, the channel is permanently deleted. While I'm sure many are inclined to favor the owners of intellectual property and have little to no issue with this process, it does present a handful of problems that should be of concern to even the most libertarian among us. To start, the copyright holder has a variety of options available to them beyond merely blocking a video. They could also choose to monetize the video for themselves or take the monetization already accrued. This is possible despite the fact that no appeal has been processed and that there may be multiple legitimate claims to the video or audio content which may only comprise a small portion of the overall video. Even so, the claimant can still monetize the entire video in their favor. There are also unusual hierarchies of overlapping outcomes that seem unnecessarily harsh and are also unnavigable. For instance, a video could be blocked only in certain countries but otherwise playable on the platform, but then it can't be monetized at all. An example of this would be a video passing the filter for the United States, the primary location of its audience, but not for Zambia, a country in which some unknown party has made a copyright claim and has opted to block the video from Zambian audiences. This action eliminates the option for monetization on the video as a whole, even though it has passed the filter for its primary audience. However, the process to dispute this is the same as any other claim. There is no clear or reasonable way to accept the limitations in playability while also opening the option of receiving monetization in those markets where the video is playable. Allowing self-management of copyright claim resolution means means there is, ostensibly, no resolution available for the content creator. It's certainly possible that a company could take a dispute seriously and spend an appropriate amount of time and energy reviewing its merits, but there's no incentive to do this, and no aspect of the process that recommends it. They put in the minimal effort needed to make an identification, and this is accepted as a legitimate claim. As another possible resolution, the company could miss their 30-day window to respond to a dispute, but this isn't a feasible strategy around which a channel would want to base its upload schedule. The most significant problem that arises from these various combinations of policy outcomes and creator roadblocks is that there's a nearly limitless opportunity to abuse the system. There are a multitude of examples of creators having their original works claimed by someone who doesn't hold the rights, or having copyright material claimed by numerous competing claimants, none of whom are required to provide any evidence of their financial interest or explain the order of priority for their supposedly interwoven rights. Whether this is done intentionally or as a result of overly sensitive software algorithms working in an automated fashion is unclear in some cases. On principle, the whole process is an affront to the concept of fair use. Fair use says that if a work is transformative or material is used for the purpose of commentary, criticism, or education, it's okay to use it without the copyright holder's permission without infringing upon their rights. While YouTube as a business can employ any usage policy they like, and the process of verifying whether something falls within the parameters of fair use is generally considered a task for the courts have a set precedent that favors fair use over the copyright holder's claim. And there's good reason for this. Criticism is a vital part of preserving our relatively pure concept of free speech, and there's a negative impact in creating the impression that it's reasonable to casually disregard essential elements of free speech like fair use. Aside from creating a system that allows outright theft and degrades the concept of fair use, these policies have another subtle and far-reaching ramification. If a creator is trying to not only comply with the law, but also comply with the rules of the platform and the wishes of the copyright holder, it can be incredibly frustrating and discouraging to have to go back and forth forever, trying to find an acceptable balance that allows publication of the content, when there's no way to access the rules or refute a negative outcome. It becomes naggingly difficult to publish a creative work to what is viewed as an open platform. Any degree of restraint placed on otherwise unobjectionable material should be taken very seriously. YouTube's sheer size and cultural impact means that their seemingly simple attempts to find ways to manage the content also set an influential example for others to follow. It normalizes the idea that it's okay to engage in the practice of acting or reacting in an automated fashion based on picking apart little bits and pieces of a larger work, which ultimately discourages creative expression and criticism. It shifts the balance in favor of the feelings of the criticized party. This act of discouragement represents a tacit inhibition that denigrates the concept of fair use and taints free speech. An analogous real-world example is the recent firing by CNN of Marc Lamont Hill alluded to in the introduction. If you're unfamiliar with the situation, Marc Lamont Hill was fired after being accused of making anti-Semitic comments during a speech at the United Nations for their International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. Professor Hill's speech was primarily focused on discussing human rights atrocities committed against Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, a subgroup of the Israeli population bestowed with full citizenship rights in name, but who are treated like second-class citizens in practice, as the claim goes. At the end of his 20-minute speech about equality and civil rights, he called for free and equal Palestinian citizens from the river to the sea. While I'm not familiar with the history of this phrase, the general sensitivity to it should be obvious to anyone even casually familiar with the Israeli-Palestinian territorial conflicts. Palestine's east coast rests against the Jordan River, with Israel between it and the Mediterranean Sea. So many people took this comment as advocating Palestinian control of the area. This, on its face, isn't clearly anti-Semitic in nature, but using this phrasing was certainly questionable given the audience. However, within the intent and context of the entire speech, it was clearly not intended to rile up territorial sensitivities. In response to this statement alone, CNN released him from his contract, deciding that his comments were not consistent with their values, but offering no further specifics. In addition, the academic institute for which he earned tenure and a full professorship, statuses that are intended to protect academics from undue retaliation so they're able to explore issues and make free statements without fear of reprisal, declined to support him in any way. He kept his job with the university, but this is a harrowing outcome for what ultimately amounts to a questionable use of idiom. It seems we've grown more accustomed recently to the idea that while we have a right to express our ideas and opinions, expression is not necessarily totally free of consequences. However, consequences represent risk for the speaker, so it's important to ensure that the potential outcomes are commensurate with the severity of the statements being made. Failure to do so results in unwarranted pressure applied to the free speaker, which results in a system that could end up resembling nominal free speech rather than actual free speech. It could be asserted that an individual is free to share ideas and criticisms, but that individual must then be willing to make a potentially significant stake on what may be a relatively simple idea. This could be a tremendous deterrent. Making good decisions about this is complicated by the idea that we can view these things in terms of minute details, stripped of complexity and nuance. The utilization of a bits and pieces approach to these types of situations represent the negation of decision-making. The software only identifies, it doesn't decide anything. The person responding to a comment made in a speech has to arrive at a conclusion based on a self-limited exposure to information intentionally taken out of context and stripped of nuance, and then supply a response that appeases the presumed sensitivities of the most delicate observer. Professor Hill's university, acting out of a fear fear of potential negative impressions that would result from failing to sufficiently distance themselves from his comments are, in turn, unable to provide clarity to the situation or offer corrections to mistaken interpretations. This isn't true agency. YouTube pulls ones and zeros to identify a minimal amount of matching information, with the end result having a potentially significant impact on people's livelihood, and could drive creators from sharing ideas and criticism on a huge scale. The notion that this simply represents a normal and reasonable business decision becomes a part of our shared culture, and we collectively acclimate ourselves with accepting this. YouTube's policies are not only harmful to the cultivation of free speech, but also to the business of YouTube, which relies on the willingness of content creators to freely upload content in the hope of garnering attention and ad revenue. YouTube contains a nearly impossible quantity of content to aggregate and relies on an economy of advertisements to function. But the advertisers are only there because it's where the eyes are pointed, and the eyes are only there for the content. Taking steps to build trust and promote an open environment for creative expression are necessary elements for creating a mutually beneficial environment that fulfills business needs while also preserving our cultural ideals related to free speech. Do you disagree? I'd love to hear your argument in the comments below. Thanks for watching.